The silver transport ship landed with a soft hum on the crystal platform of Vega Prime Academy. Steam hissed from the engines as the doors opened, revealing students from dozens of worlds stepping onto the gleaming surface. Most moved in groups, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes across the landing pad. Miho Kim walked alone. His simple black backpack looked worn and ordinary next to the floating bio cases and energy storage units the other students carried. Where others wore sleek uniforms made from materials he couldn't even name, Miho wore basic Earth clothes, dark pants, a plain shirt, and sturdy walking boots that had seen many miles back home. The other students gave him space. Lots of space. "Look, another one from Seoul, 3. Whispered a student whose body seemed to be made entirely of moving water. Her voice rippled like waves on the shore. "A Deathworlder," agreed her companion, a tall being covered in soft purple fur. His ears twitched nervously as Miho passed by. Miho had heard these words before during his long journey to Vega Prime. Deathworlder, the name other species use for humans, and the few other races that came from what they called hostile planets. Earth, with its storms and earthquakes and dangerous animals, was considered one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. Most aliens couldn't understand how anything could live there, much less thrive. The Academy building rose before them like a mountain of crystal and light. Towers twisted upward toward the twin suns, their surfaces reflecting rainbows in every direction. Gardens floated in midair, held up by gravity fields, where plants from 100 worlds grew together in perfect harmony. Miho found his first class without much trouble. Xenobiology for 01 was written in 17 different languages on the door, including Earth's basic script. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room fell quiet. 23 pairs of eyes, in colors ranging from gold to deep purple to complete transparency, turned to look at him. Some students shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others seemed to lean away, as if he might explode without warning. Professor Veltar stood at the front of the room. She looked like a giant praying mantis made of green metal, her compound eyes reflecting the light like tiny mirrors. When she saw Miho, her mandibles clicked in what he hoped was greeting rather than annoyance. "Class, we have a new student," she announced, her voice coming from a translator device around her neck. "Please welcome Miho Kim from the Sol System." A few students made polite, welcoming sounds. Most just stared. Miho found an empty seat near the back. The desk was designed for the average galactic citizen, which meant it was slightly too small for his human frame. He squeezed into it anyway, trying not to bump the delicate flower creature sitting next to him. The flower being, whose name tag read Nala, had petals that changed color with her emotions. Right now, they were a nervous yellow-green. She kept glancing at Miho, as if he might suddenly grow claws. Today we would discuss atmospheric requirements for Class M worlds. Professor Veltar began. The lights dimmed as images appeared in the air above her desk. These worlds have oxygen levels between 15 and 21%, which most species find comfortable. A student near the front raised a tentacled arm. "Professor, what about the extreme worlds? The ones with dangerous atmospheres?" Professor Veltar's eyes gleamed. "Ah, yes, the hostile worlds. Sol 3, for example." The image changed to show Earth from space, blue and white and beautiful. This planet has oxygen levels of 21% at the very top of the safe range. It also experiences what we call weather violence, storms with winds over 200 kilometers per hour, electrical discharges, and frozen water falling from the sky. Several students made sounds of horror. Nala's petals turned pale blue with fear. "The surface pressure varies wildly," the professor continued, "and the planet experiences regular seismic activity. The ground literally shakes and cracks open. Most remarkable of all, the dominant species actually lives on the surface, not in protected underground cities." Miho said nothing. To him, thunderstorms were relaxing. Earthquakes were just something you prepared for, like any other natural event. He had never thought of Earth as particularly dangerous. When lunchtime came, Miho made his way to the dining hall. The room buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages, but it grew quieter as he entered. He got in line behind a group of students who looked like walking crystals. their bodies reflecting light in beautiful patterns. The food selection was impressive. Plants from Rigel that glowed softly blue, fruits from Altair that changed flavor as you ate them, protein cubes that smelled like rain. Miho chose a mixture, some plants, some proteins, some things he couldn't identify, but that looked interesting. When he sat down at an empty table, he noticed other students watching him eat with fascination and disgust. How do you consume both plants and proteins? Nala had followed him and now sat across the table, her petals a curious orange color. We eat what we need to survive, Miho said simply. He took a bite of something purple and sweet. On Earth, we eat many different things. Nala's petals turned green with shock. But plants are alive. They have feelings. So do the protein sources. Miho pointed out gently. We respect all life, but we need food to live. The flower being stared at him for a long moment, her petals cycling through several colors. Finally, she asked, "What is it like, living on a world that tries to kill you?" Miho considered question. Back home, his grandmother tended a garden full of vegetables and flowers. His little sister played in parks where deer and rabbits ran free. His father worked as a forest ranger, protecting both the land and the animals that lived there. Earth doesn't try to kill us, he said finally. It just is. We learn to live with it, to understand it. I think that makes us stronger. Outside the dining hall windows, Vega Prime's twin suns set in perfect harmony, painting the sky in gentle pastels. It was beautiful and peaceful, and nothing like the wild, chaotic sunsets of home. For the first time since arriving, Miho felt homesick. 3 weeks had passed since Miho first walked into Professor Veltar's classroom. The other students still gave him careful looks, but some had started to sit closer. Nala, the flower being, now asked him questions about Earth during lunch breaks. Her petals stayed mostly calm colors when she talked to him. Today felt different. Professor Veltar moved around the classroom with quick, excited steps. Her metal body clicked and hummed as she prepared something special at the front of the room. "Students, today we have a very important test," she announced. Her compound eyes reflected the classroom lights like tiny stars. "This is not about memory or facts. This is about how you react to real danger." The students shifted in their seats. A few made worried sounds. The crystal beings near the front started to glow brighter, which Miho had learned meant they were nervous. "In your future careers, you will study dangerous life forms from across the galaxy," Professor Veltar continued. "You must learn to observe and take notes even when you are afraid. Fear is natural, but a good scientist does not let fear stop them from learning." She gestured toward a large metal box in the corner of the room. It was twice as tall as Miho and covered with warning symbols in dozens of languages. Red lights blinked along its edges, and a low humming sound came from inside. "Inside this container is a creature from the Kethvar system," the professor said. "It is called an umbral stalker. This species has attacked 17 different colonies. It is considered extremely dangerous." Nala's petals turned pure white with terror. The water student in the front row became almost invisible, trying to hide. Even the furry students from Procyon huddled together, making small whimpering sounds. "You will observe this creature for exactly 90 seconds, Professor Veltar explained. "Take notes on its behavior, its movement, anything you notice. After 90 seconds, security will activate and return the creature to its container." She moved to a control panel near the wall. "Remember, the containment field will keep you safe. The creature cannot reach you, but your fear response will be very real. Do not let it stop you from doing your job." Miho pulled out his old Earth-made notebook and pen. Most of his classmates used floating data screens and light pens, but he preferred the simple tools from home. He wrote the date at the top of a fresh page and waited. Professor Veltar's claw hovered over a large red button. "Beginning test in 3, 2, 1. The containment field around the metal box shimmered and vanished. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the box began to shake. Something dark flowed out like liquid shadow, but shadow that moved with purpose and hunger. The umbral stalker was unlike anything Miho had ever seen. It had no fixed shape. Sometimes it looked like a giant cat made of darkness. sometimes like a wolf, sometimes like nothing from Earth at all. Its only constant features were two burning red eyes that seemed to look directly into each student's soul. The reaction was immediate and terrible. The crystal students exploded into thousands of sharp pieces, their fear making them shatter like glass. The pieces flew around the room, reflecting light in panic patterns. The water student became completely transparent and seemed to melt into her chair, trying to disappear entirely. The furry Procyonians made sounds Miho had never heard before. Hi! Piercing cries that hurt his ears. Their first stood straight up, making them look twice their normal size. Some of them fainted and fell from their chairs. The plant students like Nala turned black with terror. Their petals and leaves curled inward as they tried to make themselves as small as possible. A few released clouds of bitter-smelling pollen into the air, probably some kind of defense mechanism. In the front row, a student who looked like a giant jellyfish began flashing bright colors in rapid patterns. Another student, covered in scales, rolled into a tight ball and wouldn't move. The creature fed on their fear. With each wave of terror from the students, it grew larger and more solid. Its red eyes burned brighter. Its shadow body became more real, more dangerous. But Miho just sat in his chair and wrote in his notebook. Subject appears to be non-solid matter organized by some form of energy field. He wrote in neat handwriting. Estimated height varies from 1 to 3 meters, depending on fear input from nearby sources. Movement patterns suggest predator behavior similar to large cats. He looked up at the creature, studying its movement. It flowed across the floor like spilled ink, but there was intelligence in those red eyes. Purpose. This wasn't just some mindless monster. It was a hunter and a smart one. Feeding behavior appears to be emotional rather than physical, he continued writing. Does not seem to want to cause physical harm. Fear response in other students, making creature stronger and more aggressive. The umbral stalker paused in its terrifying display, its burning eyes fixed on Miho, expecting the familiar rush of terror chemicals that had been feeding it since the moment it appeared. Instead, it found calm curiosity. Miho looked back at the creature with the same expression he used when watching birds in the park back home. Interested, but not afraid. He even tilted his head slightly, like he was trying to figure out how something worked. The creature's form flickered with confusion. In all its long existence, no prey had ever looked at it like this. No living thing had ever failed to fear it. Fascinating, Miho muttered, and continued taking notes. Around him, his classmates continued their panic. But in the center of the chaos, one human sat quietly and studied the monster that was supposed to terrify him. The 90 seconds felt like hours. The umbral stalker grew larger with every passing second. Each wave of terror from the panicked students fed it like fuel, making its shadow body more solid and dangerous. What had started as flowing darkness now looked like a real predator, 3 meters tall, with claws that scraped against the floor and teeth that gleamed like black glass. Red emergency lights bathed the classroom in bloody color. Alarms screamed from speakers in the walls. The smell of fear pollen from the plant students made the air thick and bitter. Emergency protocols activated. Came a mechanical voice from the ceiling. All students moved to emergency positions. Security teams responding. But the heavy classroom doors had sealed automatically when the alarm started. No one could get in or out. The students were trapped with the creature that fed on their terror. Professor Veltar's voice crackled through the communication system, high with panic. The containment system has failed. Students, remain calm. Help is coming. Remain calm. Easy words to say, impossible to follow when a nightmare made real prowled around your classroom. The crystal students had shattered completely. Their pieces flew through the air like angry insects, cutting anything they touched. The water student had melted into a puddle under her desk, only her eyes visible as tiny bubbles on the surface. The furry Procyonians huddled in the corner, making sounds like crying children. Nala had turned completely black. Her petals closed so tight they looked like a dark flower bud. She shook like a leaf in a strong wind. In the middle of this chaos, Miho stood up. The movement was slow and careful, like someone getting up from a comfortable chair after a good meal. He closed his notebook and put it in his pocket. Then he adjusted his glasses, the same simple Earth-made glasses he had worn since high school. The Umbral Stalker's burning red eyes locked onto him immediately. Here was movement. Here was a new target to terrify. But when those eyes met Miho's calm brown ones, something strange happened. The creature paused. Its shadow form flickered like a candle in the wind. "Easy there," Miho said in the same quiet tone his grandmother had used with stray cats behind her house. "You're scared too, aren't you?" The creature's head tilted to one side. In all its long existence, no prey had ever spoken to it in such a gentle voice. No living thing had ever suggested that it might be afraid. Miho took a step forward. Not fast, not threatening. Just a single, careful step, like someone approaching a nervous animal. "I know this isn't your home," he continued, his voice steady despite the alarms and screaming around him. "Someone brought you here, put you in that box. That must have been frightening." The stalker's form rippled with confusion. Where was the fear? Where was the delicious terror that had fed it for so many years? This strange two-legged creature smelled different from the others. Its heart beat steady and slow. Its breathing was calm. Behind Miho, his classmates watched in horror as he took another step toward the monster. To them, it looked like he was walking toward certain death. But Miho saw something different. He saw the way the creature held its head, not like a confident predator, but like something trying to understand a puzzle. He saw how it moved, not hunting, but exploring. Most importantly, he saw its eyes. Beneath the burning red light, there was intelligence. And maybe, just maybe, there was confusion instead of hunger. "You smell the fear from my friends," Miho said, gesturing slowly toward his terrified classmates. "That's what you eat, isn't it? Not their bodies. Their fear." The creature made a sound, low and rumbling, like a giant cat purring. Several students made new sound of terror at this, but Miho recognized it. He had heard similar sounds from the big cats at Seoul's Wildlife Center, where he had volunteered during summer breaks. "But you don't know what to do with me," Miho continued. He was close enough now that he could see his reflection in those burning eyes. "Because I'm not afraid. I'm curious." He crouched down slowly, making himself smaller and less threatening. The same way he had approached injured animals back home. The same way his grandfather had taught him to move around the wild deer that came to their mountain cabin. "On my world, we have creatures like you," Miho said softly. "Not exactly like you, but predators, dangerous ones. Tigers that can kill with one swipe of their claws. Bears bigger than you. Sharks with teeth like knives." The Umbral Stalker leaned forward, its shadow head just meters from Miho's face. Its classmates held their breath, certain they were about to watch him die. "But we learned something important about predators," Miho continued, his voice never changing from that calm, gentle tone. "They're not evil. They're not monsters. They're just trying to survive, same as everyone else." He slowly extended one hand, palm up, the way he'd been taught to let strange dogs smell him before trying to pet them. "You're not trying to hurt anyone, are you?" he asked the creature. "You're just doing what your nature tells you to do, what you need to do to live." The stalker's burning eyes fixed on his outstretched hand. For a moment that felt like forever, predator and prey stared at each other in perfect stillness. Then the creature did something no one expected. It began to shrink. The Umbral Stalker's shadow form rippled and shrank until it was no bigger than a large dog. Its burning red eyes never left Miho's face, but the wild hunger in them had changed to something else, something that looked almost like curiosity. The classroom fell completely silent, except for the steady beeping of emergency alarms. Even the panicked breathing of the other students seemed to pause as they watched this impossible scene unfold. Miho kept his hand extended, palm up, moving nothing except his lips as he continued to speak in that same calm voice. "That's better," he said gently. "You don't need to be so big and scary. I can see you better this way." The creature made that low rumbling sound again, the purr that had terrified everyone else but made Miho think the mountain cats near his childhood home. It was a sound of curiosity, not aggression. Slowly, carefully, the stalker moved closer to his outstretched hand. Its shadow body flowed like thick liquid, but Miho could see it was being very careful not to touch him yet. Testing. Learning. You're trying to figure me out, aren't you? Miho asked with a small smile. I don't smell like prey to you. I don't act like prey. That's confusing. Behind him, Nala whispered in a voice barely louder than breathing. What is he doing? How is he not afraid? One of the crystal students, slowly pulling his scattered pieces back together, whispered back. He's talking to it, like it's a pet. But Miho heard more than just words. He began to make soft clicking sounds with his tongue, not random noises, but a pattern. Click, click, pause. Click, 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 pause. He had noticed a creature making similar sounds when it first appeared, and he was trying to copy them. The stalker's had snapped up in surprise. Its red eyes widened. Then, incredibly, it began to make the same clicking pattern back to him. Click, click, pause. Click, 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 pause. You understand, Miho said with wonder in his voice. You're trying to communicate. He changed the pattern slightly. Click, pause, click, click. The creature immediately responded with the same sequence. They went back and forth like this for several moments, like two people learning each other's language. Professor Veltar's voice came through the speakers again, but quieter now, filled with amazement. Impossible. No creature has ever responded to communication during a feeding state. They become pure instinct, nothing more. That's because no one ever tried to talk to them, Miho said, still focused on the stalker. They just assumed it was a mindless monster. The creature had moved even closer now. Its shadow form was almost solid, like dark smoke that had decided to hold a shape. Miho could feel coolness radiating from it, like standing near an open freezer. You're not from around here, are you? He asked it. The HFY system, Professor Veltar said. That's a long way from home. The stalker made a new sound, softer, sadder. It was a sound that needed no translation. Anyone who had ever been homesick would recognize it. I know that feeling, Miho said quietly. I'm far from home, too. Earth is, well, it's very different from here. He gestured slowly around the crystal classroom with its floating lights and gravity-defying furniture. My world has dirt and trees and rain that falls from the sky. Real rain made of water. And animals everywhere. Some dangerous, some gentle, but all just trying to live their lives. The creature listened to every word, its red eyes fixed on his face like it was trying to understand not just his sounds, but his meaning. We have shadow hunters, too, in a way, Miho continued. Not exactly like you, but predators that hunt in darkness. We learned that most of them aren't evil. They're just following their nature. They take what they need to survive, nothing more. He shifted position slightly, sitting cross-legged on the floor like he was having a conversation with a friend in a park. The stalker immediately mimicked his posture, settling down like a giant cat. You're fear-feeding, Miho said thoughtfully. That's not really about hurting people, is it? It's about understanding them. You need to know what scares other creatures, so you can avoid things that might be dangerous to you. The creature made an excited clicking sound, like someone who had finally been understood after a long time of trying to explain something difficult. On your homeworld, fear probably means stay away from this or this thing is dangerous, Miho reasoned. So you read fear to keep yourself safe. But here, in this place full of species you've never met before, everything is confusing. Everyone's afraid of everything. The stalker nodded. Actually nodded, a gesture had learned from watching the students. Around the classroom, Miho's classmates began to whisper among themselves. The crystal students had mostly reformed, though they stayed in their seats. The water student had solidified enough to show her face. Even Nala had opened a few of her petals, revealing pale yellow instead of the terror black from before. He's right, whispered one of the furry Procyon. Look at it. It's not trying to hunt anymore. It's trying to learn. The stalker turned its head toward the sound of voices, but instead of growing larger and more threatening, it simply watched with those intelligent red eyes. Learning. Always learning. You're not a monster at all, Miho said with a smile. You're just a very lost traveler, trying to understand a strange new world. The creature purred again, and this time, it didn't sound frightening at all. News traveled fast through Vega Prime Academy. By evening, Every student on campus had heard about the human who talked to an umbral stalker. By the next morning, students from other classes were finding excuses to walk past Xenobiology 401, hoping to catch a glimpse of Miho. The stalker itself had been moved to a special habitat in the Academy's research wing. Unlike the cold metal box it had lived in before, this new home had soft surfaces and adjustable lighting. Most importantly, it had large windows so it could see other living beings without frightening them. Miho visited twice every day. "Good morning, Shadow," he said, using the simple name he had given the creature. Through the clear barrier, the stalker's red eyes brightened with recognition. It had learned to keep its form small and cat-like when Miho was around, sensing that this shape made him comfortable. Shadow made his clicking greeting, and Miho clicked back. Over the past week, they had developed a basic way to communicate. Simple concepts, mostly, but enough to share ideas. "The Academy Board wants to study our interaction," Miho told the creature as he settled into his usual spot on the floor. "They've never seen anything like it." Shadow tilted its head and made a questioning sound. "They want to understand how we became friends," Miho explained. "Most species think your kind are just monsters. But you're not, are you? You're just very good at reading emotions." The stalker purred agreement, then made a series of clicks that Miho had learned meant lonely and home and far away. "I know," Miho said softly. "I miss Earth too sometimes. But maybe we can make this place feel more like home for both of us." Professor Veltar approached the habitat, her metal feet clicking on the crystal floor. She moved much more carefully around Shadow now, with respect rather than fear. "Miho," she said, her translator making her voice sound formal. "The Academy Council has made a decision. They want to offer you a special position." Miho looked up from his conversation with Shadow. "What kind of position?" "Teaching assistant for a new course," the professor explained. "Deathworlder survival studies. They want you to share your knowledge about living with dangerous creatures." The idea surprised him. "I'm just a student. I don't know anything special." "You know things no other species in the galaxy knows," Professor Veltar said. "You understand predator behavior in ways we never imagined. Yesterday, 3 more dangerous creatures were brought to the Academy for study. The researchers are terrified of them, but after watching you with Shadow, they think you might be able to help." Miho considered this. Back on Earth, his father worked as a park ranger, teaching people how to camp safely in areas with bears and mountain lions. His grandmother had taught him which plants were safe to touch and which ones to avoid. These things seemed normal to him, but maybe they weren't normal to everyone. "What would I teach?" he asked. "How to read animal behavior, how to approach dangerous creatures safely, how to understand the difference between aggression and fear." Professor Veltar's compound eyes reflected the light as she gestured toward Shadow. "How to make friends instead of enemies." Shadow made an excited clicking sound and pressed against the barrier. It had learned to recognize words like friends and teaching. "I would need help," Miho said. "Shadow understands things about predator behavior that I'm still learning. Could we work together?" Professor Veltar's mandibles clicked, and what he had learned was surprise. "You want the creature to help teach?" "Shadow isn't a creature," Miho said firmly. "Shadow is my colleague, my partner. We both understand things the other doesn't." Within a month, the new course was ready. The classroom was specially designed with habitat areas for various species and comfortable seating for students. Shadow had its own space, not a cage or containment field, but a comfortable area where it could rest and participate in lessons. The first class was packed. Students from every year and every species filled the seats. Even some professors came to watch. "Welcome to Practical Predator Psychology," Miho said, standing at the front of the room. It felt strange to be teaching instead of learning, but Shadow's encouraging purr helped calm his nerves. "Today we'll start with basic principles," he continued. "First, most dangerous animals are not trying to hurt you. They're trying to protect themselves, find food, or understand their environment." He gestured to Shadow, who demonstrated by changing from his cat-like form to something more wolf-like, then back again. "Shadow here feeds on fear, but not because it wants to hurt people. Fear tells Shadow which creatures might be dangerous to approach. It's like reading a warning sign." A student raised her hand, a crystal being who had been in the original class. "But how do you not feel afraid?" "I do feel afraid sometimes," Miho admitted. "Fear isn't bad. Fear keeps us safe. But I also feel curious. I want to understand. And understanding usually helps fear become respect instead of panic." He spent the rest of the class teaching basic techniques: how to move slowly around nervous animals, how to read body language, how to tell the difference between territorial warnings and actual attacks. Shadow helped by demonstrating different emotional states, showing how its form changed based on what it was feeling. At the end of the class, as students filed out chattering excitedly in dozens of languages, Nala approached the front desk. Her petals were bright green with happiness. "Thank you," she said to both Miho and Shadow. "I was so afraid of everything when I first came here. Now I want to learn more." Shadow made a gentle clicking sound and shifted to its smallest, friendliest form. Nala laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I think," she said, "this academy just became a much more interesting place to learn." Through the classroom windows, Vega Prime's twin sons sat in their usual perfect harmony. But for the first time since arriving, Miho didn't feel homesick. Sometimes he realized home isn't a place. Sometimes home is where you're understood, where your knowledge matters, where you can help others learn and grow. And sometimes home is where you have a friend who purrs when you enter the room, even if that friend happens to be made of living shadow.